Welcome everyone. Running a little Palo Santo, calling in all the fantastic ones. Oh, the emos here. Hey, Lauren. Oh. How's everyone doing? Have about an hour before I'm gonna transition into something else, so I wanted to pop on after so long away, say hello. I missed you. See if there are questions brewing, anything around spiritual stuff. As you guys know, I cover a wide container. Wow, this energy that we're sitting in right now is interesting. We're transitioning out of so much retrograde planetary action and moving direct, and the transition approaching from Capricorn season into Aquarius season, I suspect, is going to bring some pretty interesting developments. A lot of energies opening up, a lot of ready to shift things radically, especially because we're entering into the rabbit year, and the questions of security are going to be coming up quite a bit for a lot of people, and security means has a different definition for each one of us. So let's see what's happening down here. Patreon group will be back soon. Okay, so you might have missed a video that I posted recently on the Patreon community. It's publicly posted for anyone who wants to check it out, but it talks about the future of the community and the fact that I have not found a form that feels ethically right. And so I'm going to continue to post there. And also I'm shifting how I'm connecting with people. So I suggest you go check out that video. It's there on the public page. But I am wanting to build more community. I'm wanting to do more in-person things. And I'm really dedicating myself to that right now. And right now, Patreon is just not the match. So I'm hoping to show up here more. And that's part of what I'm trying out, is maybe having a weekly TikTok live, choosing a time and place and then posting that. We're just gonna see. It's tricky. One of the things I've learned in the last 9 months is that I cannot seem to force myself to interact with technology. It's either aligned or it's not. It's one of the places I seem to be the most sensitive. All right, let's see here. Unearthed Dreamer, hello, welcome. It's good to see you too. All right, so I'm just gonna start talking about some stuff. Ooh, this flavor is wild. My dentist has the best lip balm. That's a weird thing to say, I know. If you like pina coladas, it smells like a stripper. And God bless all of the dancers. Absolutely. Okay, so, oh my goodness, guys, 2023. Before I get jumping into this, you'll see I have this sign here. I invite you all to check out the events that I have in my bio link. There are a couple of different options through Eventbrite. I have an online channeling happening a week from Saturday, and then that next Sunday I will be live in person in Berkeley, California, doing channeling combined with sound bath to help integrate those energies. One thing I'll say is that I've been noticing as I've started to do in-person channeling a lot more these last few months, the experience is big. It's like a little medicine journey for a lot of people. So I'm working with how do we integrate that? How do we help people re-land so that they don't come out of it and immediately feel like they have to transition back into normal life while feeling just like incredibly high. So that's something I'm playing with. There are going to be a lot more offerings, though. It's amazing to feel how the energy has shifted. You know, that tiger year, the building and collapsing energy, I think pulled a lot of us inward, downward. And that was sort of the like, almost like maximum internal processing point for this last 3-year stretch. And now we are like busting out. And February is going to be a bit of a transition month as we really sort of acclimate to the new energies. But come March, especially by the end of March, we are going to just be flying. So that's part of why I think I'm called to really step up my presence and offerings in these next few months, to support all of you who are really stepping into your calling work a lot more, or greater clarity on your purpose. And people are also moving a lot of really big, uncomfortable energies. I have been through a long slog of that and have gotten my place dusted off enough that I'm ready to hold space for others. All right, let's see here. Backwards. Okay, well, to me, this is frontwards in the thing. I took so long to write it backwards. Thank you. You know what? We're just going to put it down for now. We'll leave it there for now, actually. This is good to know, though, that it flips for y'all. And it was hilarious to try and write those two. So it's 128 and 129. You can sign up for channeling in my channeling events in my bio. Okay. So I love this, the tunneling year. 2022 was such a tunneling year, deep and deep and deep, which actually makes me think about some time I spent on a volcanic island, and the way like the earths, and we're noticing a lot of seismic activity, volcanic activity this last year, and like the way the earth is like pushing itself up as we are being pushed down is this really interesting churning. What questions do you all have? I am open to what is alive for y'all. I am and feeling into sort of like the group, those who I often connect with through these lives, people who are part of the Patreon community. It feels like so much clearing has happened, so much getting like more solid in your feet. I suspect that we are probably all able to access a much deeper level of grounding in our bodies and our lives than we had access to a year ago, which is going to be very supportive. This coming year is huge in the transition. I feel like there has been a lot thrown into the air. We've left behind a whole way of being back in the beginning of 2020. And I think for many people in the human collective, there was this assumption of like, okay, great, we'll get back to normal. There is no normal to go back to. The earth grid itself is so fresh in many ways, and people who never had any interest in spirituality or multidimensionality suddenly are having profoundly multidimensional experiences and having to rethink a lot of the assumptions. So, what energies can we expect for 2023? Okay, so I'm going to talk about this a little bit, but that is the focus of my online channeling event, which is, by the way, donation-based. That we'll do a full 2-hour deep dive, or probably an hour and then an hour of Q&A on the 28th. But the general themes for 2023, there is a lot of, now that we've sort of laid bare a lot of the mess, we've dug things up out of the shadows, we are going to really assess what does this really mean and where do we want to go from here. There's going to be this process where the human collective over this year is going to, the less aware people are going to start to settle into the fact that things can't be put back together the way they used to be. And that foundational pieces of our systems, not just in this country, but in many different geographical locations, those foundational pieces have eroded and no longer match with the population. So there's a lot of upheaval that can happen with that. I think a good example is to see what's happening in the American political system, how that has continued to progress. Things that we could not have imagined being normal are now fully normalized. And those kinds of shifts and repeated shifts are what are up this year. This is a transition year. 2023 is this bridge between what has been and the greater clarity that is really going to drop in 2024. At the end of 2024, we enter into a very different age. So This year, there's going to be clarity matched with a lot of work. We're going to be called to work. We're going to be called into living our truths more. Many of us have been learning how to tap into our truths, how to choose our truths, and that practice is going to continue. And we're going to actually drop into building our lives day to day from that place in a much more easeful way. So the energies of 2023 are really supportive for light bearers to expand, be in your calling or purpose work, or make really great strides towards your clarity on that. You know, there's a wave of teachers and healers who are sort of coming of age right now, and we're noticing a lot of the old teachers are passing, either actually physically passing or moving out of focus. And so that will be one of the things that we notice happening throughout the year. We'll notice that also in the political realm. We'll notice it philosophically in how we're starting, or how we approach our larger societal issues. And that, of course, everything's a fractal, so it trickles down into our personal lives. Some of us encounter big philosophical shifts and start living lives that we couldn't imagine living before. Making choices that maybe a few years ago would have seemed completely outlandish, but now are just the obvious aligned next thing. And not only will we have that clarity and that desire, but now there's access to the energy, the forward motion to manifest. Like this year for manifesting your highest alignments is just so juicy, so supported. The way the multidimensionality of this reality has opened up and anchored and stabilized makes it such a beautiful opportunity to really play as a creator being here. So that's actually something that will be coming up, certainly in my work, and we're going to see it around more, is what does prosperity mean? It can take many forms. A lot of times we talk about it as money or comfort, but prosperity can take almost any shape, really. It's what nourishes us, what lets us be open and relaxed. It is resource in all its different forms. And that's going to be a focus this year. A lot of people are going to be looking at shifting how they're making money, how they're bringing prosperity in, how they're structuring their prosperity. People are going to be able to come into community a lot more in ways that are mutually supportive. And so I'm giving you a little bit of like, what's the earth background, and then laying over that is the layer of light bearers. And often we're having a little bit of a different experience, related, but it translates differently through us. So it is being in the details, being in your truth, and claiming what you really want in this life going forward. Many of us have many decades ahead of us still. And this year is such a gorgeous opportunity to rewrite what was going to be the script for those decades to come. There's going to be a lot of spiritual growth, a lot of spiritual movement and revelation that moves through us, each in our own unique way. And I'm excited for that. I hope you are too. Can you share how the energy changes have affected pets, animals? Do wild animals sense the shifts? What a great question. I'm wrestling with this a little bit with my cats. The animals, just like every other living being on this planet, are also going through their shifts. Of course, it looks differently for them, but there's a greater sensitivity as we are developing and as a species becoming much more multidimensional. There's a way in which the animals are too, right? So there are many animals who are now, for example, expanding how they use tools, who are more obviously displaying what humans recognize as emotional response and interaction, complex relationships. I mean, and that's not to say that these things did not exist previously, but it's starting to transition into this place of a different level, a different potency of consciousness. Now, as most of you know, greater awareness and multidimensionality with it can also bring discomfort. an unsettledness, an agitation, a sensitivity. And we may start to see that in some of our animals, especially, there are some animals just like humans that are more awake than others. There are some animals who are here specifically to assist, who are here not only to assist energetically just being here, but to specifically assist individual humans. And so those relationships have the potential to really deepen and complexify, for communication to become much more clear. And we want to be aware of anxious behaviors or our animals absorbing our experience. I recently had a streak with one of my cats who's hypersensitive. She's going through some pretty intense awakening, and it's uncomfortable. And on the days where I am moving lots of energy, she is just at the edge, is the way I can put it. She will pee on things. She's just like seeking connection, and that's hard to hold space for. I suspect there may be ways in which the sort of wild animals around us who are so impacted by our humaning, we may have more encounters, we may have more challenges, we may have more ways in which we need to manage those energies, those relationships, those cohabitations. But it is a bit of a pressure year. This is what Spirit's saying. It's a bit of a pressurized year for the animal kingdom, and especially those who are living in the wildest places. Those places are becoming increasingly not wild. And that squeezes. It's a crucible. I'm going to shuffle some cards here. You're welcome. It's amazing to feel just like I sense it as a giant golden bubble of energy that is just under the surface of the sort of mainstream shared reality. That layer that is relatively conscious but not fully awake. There is this porosity that has formed so that golden light can kind of bubble up through the soils and reach us. So much of our orientation is now being pulled down into our bodies, into the earth. We've spent generations going upwards, and even when we talk about God or divinity or angels, we often look up, or our own souls, our soul guidance, we will look up because we're programmed that way. But really it's a downward, it's an inward, and that is what each and every one of us is being called into this year, is to fully inhabit our bodies, all the way through the feet into the earth, because your body and the earth are not actually separate. And that's where we're going to find the clearest answers and the most supportive grounding, the anchoring of the new dimension into the earth plane is done through our bodies. We have to be here to bring these energies and channel them through into the earth. So it doesn't really serve us anymore to be popping up and through. So one tip, if you are still a person, and we're all different, this won't match for everyone, but if you're someone who's accustomed to grounding your energy by opening the crown and moving down, I invite you to try out coming up from the feet, feeling the surge of the new dimension's energy coming up from the energetic body of the earth, up through the feet, out, fountaining out the crown and washing out over you. There can be a really big shift, especially for the more lightly disembodied of us. There can be a huge shift when we start to move the energy or move our awareness of the energy in that way. Become the fountain. It can make a huge difference, especially for sleep. This is a wonderful thing to do right before sleep. It's been so funny to watch the shift happening. I've had a few people that I'm doing one-on-one sessions with. I took a bit of a break, but to watch the difference in how people's energies are moving, especially people that I've been working with for a year or two. There is all this space, all of this extra light. And that, I mean, these are people who generally, when they come to me, are feeling totally overwhelmed, often feeling disconnected from their light, their purpose. You know, that's largely an ego consciousness experience. When I tune into the actual energy, the soul reality, there is so much luminosity. Like sometimes I have to like squint my eyes. It physically like translates. And the more that we can tap into that and rest in the truth of that, the more we're going to be able to manifest into reality what is there. Everything that we want is already there, of course. It is really about being aware of it. And in 2023, the ability to see in all forms is really amplified. So let's see. I'm going to pull at least one card. We'll see what comes out from Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Light deck. This is what the back looks like. Isn't it beautiful? Danielle Noel's the artist. These are like just truly enchanting and well-charged images. I highly recommend. Okay, let's see here. Let's pull cards for those present, for this room, the energies of the coming week. What is guidance? Guidance for those present in the coming week. Oh, I got this other deck I gotta share. Of course, I think this is wonderful advice. Play it out, guys. So this really is some of our most sacred work this year. And I know we've talked about the importance of joy and play and lightness, but now this is like your job. Don't make it a heavy, but this is the most efficient and most enjoyable way for us to move the intense energies that are moving, ground ourselves, connect with our truth, connect with those around us, to feel supported, to bring in abundance, play. And that looks different for each one of us. Yeah, Spirit's pointing out that that's actually, you know, if we think about rabbits, I'm talking about the rabbit year, which starts on Sunday, you know, there is a lightness to them. There's a playfulness to them when they're feeling safe, secure, nourished. Take that as your inspiration. Find your new ways of playing as a new being, a new version of yourself that you are. No, that is not the one. Pulling from the wrong side. Yeah, okay, nice. So this is a wonderful pairing actually to play. We often don't think of them as being connected. Boundaries, though, are what allow us to be relaxed and nourished in our play, right? There's a difference between being able to fully be in the abandon of it, to allow your spirit information, your inspiration to move through, and then the ability to be in the action, but also you're always kind of scanning, right? Like that hypervigilance contracts the energy, even if you're going through the motions of play. So we want to be checking in always with, am I just going through the actions of something, or am I performing the action and matching it with the energy and intention that actually makes it what it is? You know, it's just like talking to a child. You can say all the nice words, but if you're doing it with like mean face and tight voice, doesn't land the same way. So this card is called Imrama. This is about tuning in to your deep guidance, that well of light, of calling, you know, the trust that where your joy is drawing you, where your curiosity is drawing you, is the medicine, is the map to the next step. You don't have to understand it. You just gotta listen and follow and surrender as best you can with your play and your boundaries. This feels complete. This feels really good. So over the next week, I think it's wonderful homework, if you will, for all of us. Things are moving quickly. Semesters are on. Work is happening. And what if play is your most sacred job? What are the boundaries you need to put in place to allow that to happen, both in your life, logistically, and within yourself? Even if it's for a short period of time, 15 minutes of crafting or going on a walk or singing a song or dancing or tickling your child. And in that space, being open to the divine inspiration that wants to come through, because in that state, that safe place of play, you are open, you are receiving, the energy is flowing. And that is a place to receive truth, your truth, and to deepen in your trust of your own truth and your read of that. All right. Let's see. So this deck, I'm just like nerding out on cards. I have this deck called Herbal Astrology. I can't remember the name of the author right now. Look at this amazing back though. So this is a combination of medicine plants from around the world with astrology, because plants, each plant is associated with certain planets. Like mugwort, for example, is associated with the moon. It's a phenomenal deck. And for those of you who are involved in Amazonian medicine work, there are a lot of those plants mixed in, which is just so fun to play with. I've used it, in fact, as like a deck for prescription, working with certain body stuff, and I'll pull cards. And a lot of these, when I first got the deck, I didn't know what some of these plants were, and I would look them up and be like, oh wow, that is crazily spot on. So I'm really into it. Let's see here. I've been playing a lot more with these divinatory tools. For a while they had kind of like died for me. There's a kind of level of awareness where you're like, I get what's happening there. I don't feel the magic. But I kind of cycled back to, all right, well, I get how it works. And also that doesn't mean I can't play with it. It can't be, it doesn't have to be mystical and shadowed away. Esoteric is what I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be esoteric to be fun. It can be a toy for my soul to play with and to communicate to me through. So what are some plants, or at least their individual medicines, that could be a powerful support for us moving through 2023? This group of light bearers, these healers and teachers moving through greater clarity. So many having moved through the storm. 3, 2, 1. Aww. We pulled rosemary. So in many traditions, and in particular the Celtic tradition, rosemary is a medicine of memory. And so this card is actually ancient memory. Looks like it's a plant of the sun and Mercury, which is potent right now. I actually have observed a shamanic plant dieta, I've talked about this in the past, with rosemary, where I did like a deep study with that plant spirit. And one of the things that it did immediately do is bring a flood of past life memories in for me. And earth memory, which is a whole other thing. It is a year of remembering who we really are, who we've always been, where we wanted to go from the start. Remembering the gifts and skills that we've sort of tucked away as Easter eggs through our lifetimes here and elsewhere. Yeah, planting rosemary. That's a great idea. I actually have one I need to get in the ground. It's a good reminder. It's a wonderful time to be either working with plants. Some of us are actually able to plant right now, depending on where you live, starting seeds, or planting your garden, planting a tiny little window box. This is a great year to really touch in with plants in whatever way feels organic and right for you. But this is, as we're moving into a much more expansive experience of the collective, I think we're going to, many people, start to deepen in our relationships with plants and the environment around us, since the majority of the biomass on this planet is plants. It's a powerful one. Oh, that's so interesting. Rosemary was the first plant I felt connected with after seeing your live in 2021. I wonder if that was around the time I was actually dieting the plant, because it was somewhere in the spring, late winter, early spring of 2021 where I dieted that plant. Aw, it's almost our plantiversary. I love you, Rosemary. Hello, Wage Piece. Welcome. Kasha. Hello, Kasha. This was October. Okay, good to know. Well, I carry that medicine in my field forever now. The magic of a plant dietas. You're basically marrying a plant. I'm hoping that at least some of you got good rest over healer hibernation season, which is like mid-October, mid to late October through the first week of January. I found it very difficult to settle in. I had to keep like working at rest, but it was important. And I'm feeling the positive impact of taking at least a little bit of downtime where I did, like, when I say rest, I mean nothingness. I mean like stop. I slept and slept and slept. My son did too. It was pretty powerful. There was a lot of tiredness floating around time of year. How has sleep been for you all, especially the last few weeks? There's been a lot of grid work happening. As some of you know, that's kind of like a side part of my life, which is actually a huge part of my life, is grid work and working on sort of the framework of the reality, tending the earth plane through her energetic body. I've spent a lot of time working on volcanoes this last stretch. I mean, that's part of what was so intense and why I needed to really focus and kind of retreat from public. Was the grid work was a new level. And then I accidentally ended up on a volcanic island. I mean, it wasn't an accident that I ended up there. I just didn't really think about what that would do. Has anyone else been to the Big Island, the island of Hawaii, and gotten really dizzy? Like, it took me a few days to figure it out, but I basically figured I'm always pointing or driving towards the same direction. When I would get like so much vertigo, I had to stop. Like, there's like a stop line I could not continue to drive safely past. And there were several roads, and I finally figured out they were all pointing towards the same thing, which of course ended up being Kilauea, home of Pele. Oh, Pele, that's another story. Let's see here. I've been waking up every night around 2 to 4. Me too. Going to sleep is hard, waking up is hard, dreams are wild as always. I've been exhausted. I was off yesterday and had a huge to-do list. Weird dreams. Yeah, this is confirming what I'm hearing from other people too. The dream space is really cracking open in some strange ways. There are a lot of energies that are sort of like crossing through. So get the sleep where you can. And that period of time, that usually it'll start somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m. for a lot of people. That window of the early morning is just spongy. It's extra flexible. It's already a point in the 24-hour cycle. It's always a little flexy. But now it's this whole other thing. And there's a lot of really deep work that's happening. And it's a point also in the night where a lot of people's bodies are processing a crap ton of grief. So like unconscious grief, deep, collective grief, that is one of the more common energies that moves through that time of the night. And so if you're really sensitive, that might be something to just bring a gentleness to. You could even if you're not feeling the symptoms of grief in that moment, just like acknowledge, send a blessing to the collective, sort of put yourself in your own bubble, to see if that may help with settling you. Another thing with sleep, I know I've talked about this previously in somewhere. I sometimes forget, and when I remember, it is such a godsend, but to armor up before you go to sleep. I have in my mind a specific, like, it's like golden galactic armor, and with all these like light codes and sacred geometry and stuff that build it. But I slip into my sleep armor before I fall asleep. I just imagine it, you know, coming online. And I speak my intention that I'm going to stay in my own experience and filter out that which is not mine. And so, like, over time, it sort of programs, when I imagine that armor on myself, it brings in that intention. And when I remember to do it consistently, my sleep really improves. It's hard to control what's happening and what we're experiencing when our physical bodies and minds are unconscious. Mo Can Do It is saying, I ask my guides to turn on the do not disturb sign before I go to bed. I love that. It's another way to do it. That's great. This year, we want to be practicing our sovereignty, our self-sovereignty in the really tiny ways. You know, I think we've been moving big energies and making big changes, and now we're fine-tuning. You know, the real medicine for us in 2023 is creating enough space where we can notice, where we can listen, where we can shift these little threads, because that's where the real power is now. That 5% difference may not have had a huge impact a few years ago. Now it does. Now you have the opportunity to really dial in. What are your processes? What works for you? Does it work better to put on the do not disturb sign? Does it work better to put on galactic armor? Try different things out, but carrying the through line of you are stepping into the greatest truth of you. And that's not just, what am I doing on this planet and what does my work look like? It's, how do I sleep? How do I brush my teeth? How do I approach grocery shopping? What are my policies around screen time? These ways of tending the body are part of how we maintain homeostasis on all levels, not just the physical, but there's a kind of mental homeostasis that we are hungry for and that we need. I set office hours from 9 to 10, but lately I've been feeling big energies just chilling around me. Nice. Yeah. And so a lot of you too are going to start to move into a way of being where your baseline energy awareness is going to be much higher than what you're used to. And they're going to be, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to be experiencing these sort of like little like hops. It's not necessarily like a smooth curve up. You know, there are going to be these like fits and starts. And sometimes it's going to be a shocking change from one week to another, one day to another, 1 hour to another. I have had some wild 1 hour to another jumps in my life. And that's the kind of energy I think is going to be lurching, is the word, kind of lurching out as we're getting used to this more expansive way of being, right? And it's not just energetically expansive and like knowing the multiverse, it's the lives around us. You know, the rules are softening in many ways. People's perspectives are softening. Their allegiances are shifting. Things are flexible right now. And in that flexibility, we are more aware of the spirits around us, in us, through us. The energies flying around, the mood shifting in the person in the apartment next to you. And when that's happening, the invitation is to not personalize it. All of this is stuff that's moving through you. It's not you. And that includes when you're reliving like old insecurities that you thought you had moved on from, and you're like a pile on the floor shaking and crying. That experience is not you. It's not the truth of you right now. It's a ghost moving through you and exiting. And the more you can surrender to that and not fight it, invite it, like bring it on. Open your foot portals. Let it move through. Go into the crying. The more that you do that, the easier it will be to be in the habit of not identifying with the experience and not personalizing it. It's the identification that makes it so unwieldy and so incredibly painful. It's not that there isn't pain, but it's more distant. You can sometimes laugh at it. It's like, another round of this clearing. This is ridiculous. Where's the tissue? I am just a pouring mess. How hilariously human. This is a year where we practice our skills and our tools. This is a year of remembering your personal skills and tools that you're bringing in to offer to the world. Give space to that. I think there have been so many decades of waiting to arrive somewhere. We are there now. You have arrived. You're just in the process of being able to see it in yourself and in your life. But you're there. You can't be more there than there. That's going to be one of the things that we work with this year. Especially those of us living in the Western collectives where there's kind of this bottomless hunger, particularly in the United States. This constant growth obsession. And there's a need for integration. There's a need to acknowledge the truth of you, which is that you have everything that you could ever need or want. All the information you could ever need or want is right there. Now it's just rooting in it, seeing it, allowing it to be real, practicing its truth in your life. Integration is just embodiment. Just a fancy word for embodiment. Bring it in. Walk the walk. Beautiful. Wage Peace is saying, I've been doing a return to center and calling back my energy before bed. Yes. It's like physically satisfying to hear. It feels really good. Always calling our energy back. I am having to do that quite often. I'm tapering off a little, but there was like a 6-week stretch where I basically needed to call my energy back like 50 times a day. Sometimes it would be like every 5 minutes, just like, stay here, get out of other people's process. It can be hard, especially as healers. We are programmed, not programmed, we are built. Thank you, Spirit. We are built to notice, to care, to value the assuaging of pain of others, often to our own detriment. We would often rather be in pain ourselves than watch others be in pain or cause them pain, even worse. Call it back, call it in. None of it is your business. You are your business, your energy, tending your frequency. That is your business. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So part of all this shift within the old paradigm, we're going to see a lot of strife. We're going to see what to us will seem like atrocious choices. And a big part of the practice for us this year is moving into sacred neutrality. It can be very difficult to move out of judgment, particularly in things where we feel we hold the righteous stance. Righteousness is irrelevant now. It's not about one clear way, one truth. There are very few things that can apply to all of existence. Very few. We want to stay in our canoe and keep our energy here. And the way that we do that is by stepping out of our habits of judgment, right? There's a difference between discernment, noticing the data, the difference, and judgment, assigning meaning to that data. And we all have our places of judgment. I'm an incredibly judgy person, y'all. This is something I have to work on a lot. I was raised by 2 roosters. 3, really. It is so easy for my Virgo mind to go to that place, especially because I was born in the dog year. Like, there's a right and a wrong, and we all must be ethically at the top of our game, and that does not serve me. It doesn't serve the other person. When we're judging, we are simply tuning into something that is quietly alive in ourselves, or we fear is alive in ourselves. So we're pushing it away by directing our judgment towards someone. And as we watch the human collective, I'm trying to choose the words here. There's so many options. Mud wrestle, repeatedly stumble and fall, behave as toddlers. You know, and I'm talking about big structures of power, right? It's very easy. Even these languages that I'm using that are coming to me are still laced with some judgment, right? That's the practice. Pull out of who you think is right and who you think is wrong, because all of that is what ties us to it, is what makes it harder for those energies to shift and move. We are here illuminating, we're anchoring. We have the capacity and the self-awareness to make a different choice. The vast majority of this planet does not have that option. If they could make a different choice, they would. We all have these people in our lives, right? They're so close, and it's just like, oh my God, how could you possibly have this belief? How could you make that choice? Like, just 5% more self-awareness and you'd be there. That 5% might as well be 95, because it's what their soul is building them to do in that moment. And we all have a max of our self-awareness capacity. For some of us, that max is simply built into our generation, or what the grid was in the moment of our birth. But we all have it. And it doesn't serve anyone, and it wastes a bunch of our energy to try and change other people's capacity. Focus on your capacity. Stay in your canoe. Everything is holy. Everything is sacred. Just some of it is masquerading as the opposite. That can be a really hard one. It's a good thought experiment to play with. Choosing the thing you are most judgmental of or hate the most horrible person in history, and sit with the truth of their inherent divinity. They may have chosen to not display that divinity in this lifetime, but that doesn't mean it's not there. We are all the one thing. And the more that we here can hold that truth, of course it's not, constant. We have our moments. But allowing that to be our default, that everyone is a sacred being of light, that releases us from so much entanglement. That brings so much energy and focus back into your life, your manifestations, and your purpose. There are very few new dimension healers who are here to get into the polarity game. Almost none. There are a lot of healers and high vibration folks who play in those edges, and sometimes that's a phase we're passing through. Often it's a phase we're passing through to another place, another way of being with ourselves and the world. And so think about that as you're making your choices of how to be in community, right? So one of the things that comes up is activism, right? It can be easy for healers and light bearers to hold judgment against those who are not activist in the way that they are, or who are not engaging with the outside world in the way that you may feel called to. There's no one right way to do it. I feel that this is coming up right now because there's going to be a lot of activism floating around. And I, as someone who lives in California, like, this is one of the most uncomfortable things. And keep in mind, I have like a pretty intense activist past. But like that energy of, we are the enlightened ones, what's wrong with the rest of this country, is actually one of the most uncomfortable, most constriction causing energies that floats in the California collective. It is so irritating. It makes me want to move away. Even though I have threads of that in me too, it is not aligned as new dimension healers to live that way, to be looking at our neighbors that way. Even when they're posting crazy signs and saying hateful things, we don't have to subject ourselves to that. But it's not our job to judge their soul emanation. Shine your light. That's how you shift it. Okay, let's see here. Yeah. Mindful dance. Let's talk about that for a moment. So this is something that's been coming through me quite a bit. I'm working on like a dance form that does grid work. And that seems to be moving a lot for people. Mindful movement in different ways, deepening in that, expanding our perspective of that. I love this idea of pairing it with mudra. This goes to how ripe it is to work the earth matrix through our physical bodies. And it moves the energy really efficiently. There's a good recharge. Oops. Virgo struggle really is real. It's so challenging to move out of judgment, but so rewarding and empowering when we do. It's true. Very true. And it's not a one and done, right? This is always a practice. So we don't want to judge ourselves too when we slip into it. I have Mars and Jupiter in Scorpio in the second house. So like value stuff, my personal values, the way value is made, all of that, like I can get real stingy. And that is almost a daily practice for me to not drop into like, I will burn that person's face off. I don't judge myself when it comes through, but it took a long time. Ooh, great idea. Okay. I don't know if I talked about this before. So I like to refer to like the sharpest, most punishing, judgmental part of me. Like I've kind of created like a little bit of a character around it, like an alter ego that allows her to be separate but also within me. She's a loving piece of me, and that she reacts because she wants to protect me, right? This is a part that has formed over time. And so instead of rejecting that or judging myself because I've plotted someone's demise because they said something that I thought was stupid, then I will just sort of be able to move into this like laughing place, this like soul laughter. I'm like, oh, Katya. She's like a Russian assassin. It's really how she rolls. I'm like, oh, Katya, you're at it again, my sweet girl. I love you so much. I'll like imagine her like shrinking down into a child and like holding her and like melting the potential for judging myself when I'm noticing that part of me is up. It can be really fun. Yeah, judgment creates resistance to oneness. Earth Angel, you're in California too. What region of California are you in? I'm curious. I live outside of San Francisco. touching things. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Loving all of our shadow bits is a big part of this year to come. Bringing them in. It's all one thing, right? Like my ability to just absolutely psychologically demolish someone in 3 sentences is just as sacred as my ability to illuminate awakening in 3 sentences. You know, like these are not to be erased, not to be put into a tension with one another. They're different parts of the same mosaic. And the more that we can live that way, the easier it is to be with the dynamic diversity of experience that's rolling through the old paradigm. And this is going to be increasing. The intensity in the old paradigm, in the old dimension, is going to be like really stepping up. It's going to get really messy. It's going to be in its transition. A lot of death of systems and philosophies that is just starting. Like, I think it seems like it has been in full swing, and it is not. This is the amuse-bouche. So the more neutral we are, the more we're able to anchor our light here from our dimensions of origin. Daryl, you're in Alameda. Yes. I thought you were just a little bit closer to me, actually. It's not that far. Yeah, so like, yeah, Kesha, thank you so much for that. It's the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. We need both. Neither one has identity without the other. And the tension between them is, or the perceived tension, is the creative force in us. That is kind of like a fingerprint. That particular matching and mixing and rubbing, the friction of that. It's a friction, not a tension. That is where your medicine lives, right? It also goes to kind of like our greatest challenge is also our greatest gift. Same realm. So we want to tap into that amazing resource. And the only way to do that is to bring those parts in, right? Like, it's not a calling out, it's a calling in. I've always equated my judgment more with my intellect and house it within myself like that. Yeah, it is a defense mechanism of the intellect. It's how the intellect manages emotion. Manages a feeling of decreased safety is the most common. Fear is almost always the driver of judgment. And our intellects are not the enemy. You know, I know that there's such a old paradigm way of thinking of sort of like the ego consciousness as this thing to erase or to kill. And it's not at all. It's one of our greatest gifts. We want to integrate it. We want to bring it back into like healthy scale with everything else. But it is the juiciness of you here. It's part of what makes you unique, and it's certainly what keeps you alive. Keeps you from like waltzing off the top of a mountain in ecstasy. Oops. Okay, here. Okay, I gotta move this foot. This is messing up my situation. Okay. Pet Mama Marina, I'm eager to hear what your serious question is. Yeah. So one of the ways that we can work with judgment in ourselves, where am I time-wise? Okay, I need to go in just a bit. Some of the ways we can work with judgment in ourselves is to shift the language, right? Shift the lens. It can be as simple as moving into like, is this my sacred yes or is this my no? That is the way we tune to the alignment. And that then can be even further simplified into, does this make me expand or contract? Which sometimes just feels like a numbness or a stagnancy or almost being paralyzed. That will guide you, right? Because judgment creates a constriction. It's a no, right? You start to encounter those feelings and it becomes easier to move back. And it is a practice. It's taken me 2 years to be able to consistently just like boom, 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 be able to read my yes and not yes in all things, moment to moment. And that is about consistency and practice, right? There's a lot of conditioning that we absorb and that we continue to absorb from the collective around us. It's not just childhood and our past experiences. Like, it's a day-to-day thing that is possible to enter into our realms because of what it is to grow up here in this reality, especially when you're really self-aware and sensitive, absorbent, as many of you are. So allowing your personal language with yourself, your internal way of organizing, talking to yourself, all of that, simplifying, coming into as much neutral language as possible can make it easier for you to notice when there's a tiny shift. We're so bombarded in this reality. There's a numbing that has happened in our sensing ourselves and our joy, and many of us still unconsciously carry conditioning that there's just sort of a baseline difficulty to life or discomfort, or you just have to kind of suck it up and grin and bear it. There's a certain amount of obligation. This is old paradigm bullshit. And part of that is also shifting your experience of yourself and how the energy moves through you, right? Like, there's garbage flying around all over the place. But it's also noticing early on when you're moving out of the yes into the not yes, right? And that might be opening your phone 15 seconds earlier than was the actual alignment. It might be, oh, I am drinking this tea instead of this lemonade, and letting go of trying to understand, this is the intellect piece, letting go of trying to understand why it's a not yes is a big piece of unlocking the puzzle. And that takes time, and that takes clearing conditioning. Clearing conditioning is going to be one of the big focuses of this year, because as I was saying, there's this fine tuning, and what that really means is that you're pulling away all of the things that are extra, because the baseline of you, the truth of you, doesn't need to learn how to be in joy, doesn't need to find its purpose, doesn't need to attune to what is a yes and a not yes. That's already there. That's the truth of you. It's just the conditioning that makes that feel distant or difficult to tap into sometimes. When we're practicing these things, it's not actually that we're working the muscle of the skill, it's that we're working out the conditioning and its impact on us. And sometimes the conditioned energy is gone, and there's still a little bit of like a habit. And I know some of you have experienced this where you've like healed something, but then there's the habit of like, I'm used to feeling badly about this interaction or situation. You know, like, there are many ways this reality imprints itself on us. And so getting in there, not only letting things flow when they're naturally moving, but also for some of you, I think it's going to be really important to find ways to support pulling out individual threads of energy, because not everything moves really easily on its own. There's some stuff that we do need support as new dimension healers to extract and move. You know, that's why I talk to my mentoring, my channeling mentor, like for an hour every week. Keeping it clean, staying crystal clear on the energies, what is what. Especially because I work with people in their own conditioning and trauma, you know, it's easy to absorb stuff. Okay, let me see what's happening down here. Marina, you are, hold on, let me tune in a little bit more. Yeah, so I don't know if you were here earlier when we were talking about the increased multidimensionality on the planet, but having sort of what in the mainstream we would call like low-grade hallucinations, but it's not that. Extrasensory awareness, these things are increasing. They've been increasing for a few months, and it's really going to step up this year. So we might be encountering some experiences that might feel a little frightening, or at least uncertain, fresh, new. And that can be seeing things, that can be hearing, that can be funny sensations moving through the body, goosebumps in funny places at moments that it doesn't make sense to have goosebumps, dreams flashing through. Some of you are increasing with your animal communication, and so like the synchronicity of how you interact with other beings might start to feel really multidimensional. Some of you might feel like you're falling through space-time. There's so many ways it manifests, and also it's all normal. It's all a part of what is flowing, and each one of you will have a unique experience, and it doesn't mean you aren't, you know, expanding and growing and healing and emanating if you're not having those experiences. But for some of you, you are built to be a bit of an extrasensory sense organ to notice. And so it sounds like you're having some clairaudience, is what we call that, when you like actually hear energies and, you know, beings, etc. For you, this is my read from where I'm sitting. In that instance, what you are hearing is actually like your own soul trying to like come through. It's really your higher self, we'll say, which is like an intermediary. Your higher self trying to come through and start to anchor that dialogue between the two of you in your conscious awareness. The dialogue's always there, especially when you're asleep, but for you, there's this invitation to bring the relationship into a much more conscious place, and you seem built for a certain amount of clairaudience. Oh yes, I see. We're having multidimensional experiences down here. Yeah. Over time, it'll become normal. It'll become a thing you don't even really give thought to. Trying to remove the knee jerk. Yeah. And when you have the knee jerk, it's okay. You know, we don't want to judge ourselves as like, whoa, that's understandable. That would be really frightening. I give myself some love. I'm gonna like watch something that's really comforting. Like, we don't have to kind of like go into like deep meditative practice and like live our lives as these like pristine monks, right? Like, sometimes you just need to tap out for a little bit, you know, like go eat a sandwich, put on something kind of like, you know, entertaining, but not necessarily spiritual, overtly spiritual, move with it in the way that feels aligned. I was going to say good for you, that feels good for you, but Spirit's saying aligned. Move with the alignment. And when you're having these experiences, if energy moves up, because often we'll get unsettled, if caught off guard and the energy pops up, that's the invitation to bring it back down with whatever your grounding practices are. You know, like visualize the energy dropping back down, connect with the energy of the earth, and allow the earth's energy to come up through you, which kind of like, you know, it brings you back into your full experience. Because when you're fully grounded in the new dimension, in the earth's energetic body, it is a lot harder to feel knocked off your center in general, but certainly by energies and divine contact. You know, like all of that flows much more easily when you are rooted in the earth's energetic body. Fear, like this kind of thing, not mortal fear, not your life is threatened, but like these ego fears that come up are actually very, very surface. We're just used to them having a lot of meaning. And the collective energies, there's a lot of fear around extrasensory things. Kasha, I'm so glad that you're dropping into Reiki. That feels so good for you. Yeah, I'm glad you're on that. Oh, Amber, I love you. I'm not grounding. It's something we all have to work on. I too, like I cannot tell you how often I'm like having this big experience and I'll be talking to my mentor and then she's like, all right, well, let's drop the energy back down through your feet. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Okay, I was missing that part. I was like moving at like 150 miles an hour out here. And just like, oh, just drop it through the feet. That's right. And then I return. I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm here. Okay, so I'm gonna go get ready to head out. I'm gonna go see a dear friend and have a little hot tub time. Oh, actually, she's a member of our Patreon community. This has been a fantastic redropping in. For those of you who weren't here earlier and are having difficulty reading my backward sign, I have 2 different channeling events that are happening, one online, one in person. You can find the links to register for those in my bio, in my link tree. And the online event is donation based, so pay what you can. It's really, this year I'm trying to get in front of as many light bearers and new dimension healers as possible, because I am like chock full of activations and like my channel is like pulsing and throbbing to just like shoot these activations out at people in various ways. And so I'm doing lots of one-on-one sessions now, and I'm bringing back limpia practice. So anyone who's local, I am now bringing people, this is what I used to do before the pandemic. I bring people into my home, put you on a massage table, and we do like a 2-hour plus energetic clearing. It's a shamanic experience. It can be deeply physical for some, particularly potent if you work with plants. And yeah, so I'm offering a lot of different things to try and match people with the activations and light codes that are meant for them, because we're all on our own path. Our guides are the ones who really determine what comes through for whom. And so I will be doing an hour of channeling plus an hour of Q&A on the 28th. And then the 29th, Sunday, I will be live in Berkeley, California, at the Berkeley Yoga Center doing what I'm calling channeling in sound. And I'm hoping this is going to be a monthly event. It will definitely be monthly for the next few months at least. And it's an hour of transmission. The in-person transmission is different, y'all. So I'm going to give you a heads up now that as big of an experience as some of you have, like across here, having my physical body there to emanate, like our cells being in conversation, can be a much deeper experience. It's a lot of divinity in a room when we gather, and it's such a privilege and such a gift. So we're going to do an hour transmission. We'll do some Q&A. And then I, along with some dear spirit sisters, are going to offer an hour sound bath to allow the energies to really soak and integrate, and to help people re-land into their bodies and their lives a little more fully than has been happening in the last few months. It's never my intention to send people out into the world just like flying through the stars. Back in our bodies, everyone. So if you're interested in any of that, want to learn more, just follow my link tree. It's all there. Okay. Thank you so much to everyone who's been here, who showed up, who asked questions, who shared with each other. Thank you for the wisdom and skills and tricks you've been offering here. And I'm really, really looking forward to all that is coming through this year. You know, there's been a lot of call from spirit to move in a certain way and not being able to figure out how to align all the logistics, and it seems like that is starting to lift, at least some. May it continue. All right. I love you all so much.